would like to talk about some very interesting ideas, and hopefully quickly, even though I think it's going to be a long one, but still, I have the intention to make this quick. You see, we have vision, and our vision allows us to visualize and see the imagery in stories. Stories suggest continuation, and continuation suggests a certain behavior of time with a certain change in time, and also with a certain behavior in space and a certain change in space, you know? So we realize what is changing is actually our experience of these things that we don't truly understand but are aware of. In other words, we are aware that life has an intelligence, but we don't understand it. The method we use to go understand it is either based on our own information or on other information. What I am suggesting is that you need to appreciate your own methods, because your own methods are your own creative views. They're your own first answers to problems, you know? And sometimes you see that even though you know an answer to a problem, it's not your answer, it's just wisdom. For example, sometimes, right now here actually, I'm sharing many of my own answers to a lot of existential problems. But at the same time, I'm sharing the answers that I've heard others say before me about it. And realize we become aware that there are subtleties in life, and there's decisions in life, and there's choices, and these choices, in a sense, can dictate our experience, or in a sense, can be detached, can be transparent. In other words, it doesn't matter what story you've thought about yourself, you know, in this life to be in, to be a character of, you just lived it. So when you are alive, you don't need to show that you're alive. You know you're alive. You don't need to prove that you're alive. So in other words, think about how you're alive right now. And if someone came up to you and he's like, you're not alive, you're an illusion, you know? And you realize, you know, you'd be like, no, I know I'm alive. How do you know you're alive? It's like, well, let me see in what method of explanation I shall give it to you. So in other words, we are not the way we explain things. All that you're hearing me explain things is just a natural combination of what I utilize as my communication. But it's not me. My perception is unspeakable, and that is why it's my perception. It's not yours. But at the same time, what is unspeakable doesn't mean it's unknowable. In other words, human beings can share the same knowing. And so you must have an awareness of how human beings have approached life here. What kind of questions have other human beings asked? Go check that out. Do your research, because then you'll be inspired by people spending their whole life answering those questions nobody did. Nobody asked why we're here. And you realize when you ask that question, you realize nobody immediately in your environment has asked why you're here. They're all, but before they have. So every person has a different depth, you know. Someone who likes to go into a casino has a different attention on a different game of life than someone who sees every minute a gamble, you know. Your sensitivity to your life is pretty much how attentive you become to your moment. A spiritual life is one that is not dictated by stories. In other words, the creator is not limited. The creator is limitless. And because it's limitless, its creation is limitless as well. So the creation and the creator are one. So when we are becoming one with things, we are in essence seeing the oneness and the equal sign between many ideas that are suggesting our existence and the methods in which we are alive. And the reasons why we're alive, you know? And it is formed. So one thing you as a person need to do of just coming here is to become comfortable with form and changing form. What that means is if suddenly your favorite, let's say TV show stops, you're okay with it, you know? If suddenly all your plans went to nothing, you're okay with it, right? You must see your vision in your creativity, you know? In other words, I've sat down and I realized I could sit down and have infinite visions of different plans of how life should work and how it should be and what's efficiency and how our technologies can improve and what health really means and what life really is. I've had many ideas, but I realized it's not about that. It's like the knowing is an energetic presence, and once you're there, you see. Regardless of what method your practice is interpreting your surroundings. When you understand that there's a collective intelligence, that means you are part of it. That means you have the same knowing as many others. But your access is this. In other words, we're all climbing up the same wall with different ladders, but it's the same awareness. So what we understand is that the designers of the design of life in which we find ourselves in, and this is of course my experience. I don't want my words to turn into yours. You have your own words, these are mine. And what I mean by that is that you can choose to climb the ladders which have helped me, which have been made by my own experiences of what works and what doesn't work, or you can choose to look at it yourself. And I hope regardless of what method you use, you see that the design of life is profound because there's an unknown element to it that suggests you're more, that there is something more. That sense of more to life, that sense of the beyond, or even the within, that sense of unknown is an area where we find our conscious mind can creatively put in any story. You can choose to create many different stories, just like the same creativity that is found in your craziest dream can be found in getting cognitions and observance of life. So you see that there is changes, but there's society and culture. It's like you're no longer a caveman. You're here with actually a lot of communication. And the communication back then didn't have, any communication. Maybe the only noise he heard was his stomach growling, right? And maybe the emptiness of the cave, but or the crackling of fire. But it's more than that. Once you realize there's more to your sense of existence, you appreciate the unknown, because you see that your knowing can be taken away. You're not grateful for your memory. That's why you're not sensitive into being aware of it. You're not grateful for what you're given. And what that means in a sense is that you are not grateful that you are alive, and so you're not observing it well. So we see what is not allowing gratefulness to be seen, what is making people feel ungrateful, and we realize it's hard experiences. It's experiences of a cold system when you're born in warmth, the warmth of your mother's embrace, and you realize life is actually much more separated. So what is keeping this amount of separation? You see, we can't blame. We can't say, all right, the government is responsible, all these controlling elites are responsible. But at the same time, we are responsible as well for our own experience. So in a sense, my talk is warming up your awareness that you can choose what level of consciousness or state or even hierarchy of existence you want to be within. You create your own hierarchy because everyone has an interpretation of separatism that is only unique to them, to the forms they're observant of. Music is being made everywhere. And we see that we don't need to cage ourselves from the unknown. We don't need to have the unknown create a cage for our sense of transcendence. The unknown does not need to be interpreted, so do not seek an interpretation, but be aware and attentive to what is an interpreter, why you interpret things in the way you do. And that is wisdom, because wisdom comes from self-reflection, first of all. In other words, the wise student was the one that sat down to really see what they were being taught. The wise sage was the one who understood that silence is a greater communication than the words that can trap the mind of man into its reflection. At times, guilt is not yours. You as a baby don't come into this life thinking you're guilty, God, I'm guilty for being born, I'm guilty for being a madman. No. You choose, you create an identity that governs you based on the values you perceive to be within it. We are a self-created idea that is real. What is an unreal self-created idea? Well, when you explore an unreal idea, you see that it's a separation that is unified. It's as if you're looking at all those cheerleaders who got together to make one symbol. In other words, we're seeing that there is one symbol when we look at all of us working like cells in a body. In other words, we are all here. We're part of this whole sense of existence, this collective sense of body, but at the same time we're separate and we have different purposes. Some people are fighting for different causes. So we see that when we think about purpose, the cells in your body have multiple purposes. So it depends on your sense of separation and your consideration of separation that you find a purpose in your life. You can have infinite purposes, or you can have no purpose. But you see that once you seek truth outside of the frames of ideas, you realize that sometimes you agreed to things because they felt good, but they weren't the idea that you were meant to perceive. In other words, I'm like, there is no God, my friend. Here, have some candy. You know, it's like someone really giving you a solid statement. And solid statements are spears being thrown by madmen into your mind. If I tell you, no, life is like this. Life is, this worst condition imaginable, and you're too solid and you can't change. If I said that, I would be a madman. It's as if I am in a changing universe, stabbing you with limitation. And our sense of compassion to any presence must increase. You must be able to show kindness, not to just a certain type of person, to everything. You must be kind to your moment of experience. And you choose how gentle and calm you want your presence to be in. Because some people are not aware of it. They think they're calm, but there are agitations within their subconscious mind, if you would like to call it, where they're bothered. It's as if you don't look at some things that affected you in your childhood, some sudden huge changes, then you're missing out on some emotions that are developing in you, but you're not acknowledging. Acknowledge everything about yourself. And through holistic vision, you shall see what you are in your emptiness. Once you see what you are not, then you can see what you are. Once you see what you are, you can see what you are not. And that observance sees through both eyes. The same, if you think you're a sinner right now, trust me, you could also look through the presence that you are now through the eyes of a saint. And trust me, if you think you're only a saint, you will look through the eyes of the sinner. Life will pull you to its opposite to tell you it's both of them. That when Rumi, this poet, said you need both good and bad because you need two wings to fly, he was true that within the observance of the moment where both the good and the bad are originating to fight each other in your creative battleground is where at the end of that war, who stands is the emptiness of the battlefield when all have utilized, when both sides have attracted to one another to become no longer their separation. You choose if you want to be identified by your separation or by your unification. And once you choose to be defined by your unification, you really see people. You see the same amount of realness that you have seen existentially within yourself, within others. You see that people do not need to be crowded and surrounded with ideas before they enter crowds and work with and go with the flow. You may choose to go with the flow, but you may have not looked at the playground that well. And that's why you don't think it's a playground. You actually think it's a battlefield. It's not a battlefield, it's a playground. Be sensitive. Your quality of experience is too insensitive. In other words, you don't care when you step on the ant. Begin caring that you're stepping on the ant, and not because you're trying to be some earth lover or whatever, just because you're aware that there's life on that level. You're aware that this tree is here. Once you become sensitive to life, there comes this natural wisdom where it's as if you hear the wind every time it blows. You know, it's like this trust in the moment. And once you find this trust in the moment, regardless of the type of sun you see, your eyes will never get burnt because there are no eyes that have to see in a certain way. There's a sense of a still peace of mind where your ideas didn't have to be based on the conditions, which are other ideas. How you think about your ideas are based on other ideas. Just see the ideas that are making you think in ways that are not helpful to you, and you no longer need to find that. You see, if anyone has an addiction, know you have an interest to the behavior, to a practice. You have this habit that is not good for you. If you have a habit that is not good for you, all that you can do is not try to break the habit, like Linkin Park. You want to actually observe the lowest peak that your habit is showing you and see if you really deserve that. Do you deserve the life you think you're living right now? Do you deserve the hardship? Or do you believe that, yes, you do deserve it in this moment, but you can also change your experience of the moment into the profundity that is the unknown opening of new eyes? Be comfortable and, in a sense, get comfortable with your unknown. You need to be having new experiences every day. And new experiences means no longer thinking about the problems of the past or the limitations, but actually going and becoming a new answer. So we need to see that life has answers, but sometimes these answers don't need questions. And at the end of life, all these questions may ask separate questions, but in a fractal universe, you will discover that it all comes down to the same thing. That what you see, the most immediate symbol in life, is you looking back at yourself as everything else. And that when I say the music has been always playing, you realize existence has always existed. And truth shall be remembered because it is a recognition. It is a re-awareness to senses of self you have kept too long and need to change. Give yourself allowance to change into your greatest vision. And also allow yourself and allow life and its unknown processes to guide towards you the greatest information you need to have. If you want to get out of a condition, become aware of your condition where your definition of life is no longer with the same definitions. If you're having problems, stress in your life, your definitions need to change immediately. So find some quietude, find some stillness, and observe. Or read and research on all the ideas you have on what you are. The spiritual journey is not a story that is the illusion of a crazy person. The spiritual story is someone's private experience of how they exist. When someone speaks about their spiritual experience, they are suggesting a fabric of experience which consciousness can have. You guys, before our revolutionaries were people in, let's say, they did things we hadn't done before. But our revolutionary and visionary ideas now must be ones that are bringing ideas never thought of before. We're coming up with answers and depth that people couldn't see before. If you're a person who's born here, I suggest a very awesome thing to do is to go look at what people thought life was back in the day. And to see which interpretation of life you want to continue to shine light on. Because if all the children in the world came here and asked you, what is life? What would you say? And you would say that life is here, life is now, and life is infinite ability to create with an observance and awareness to all forms. And all those kids would probably be like, what are you talking about? And I'm like, nothing. And I will smile. And they will smile back. Because kids understand nothing more easily than they understand something very shaped and solidified and surrounded and coded with history's, firm grip. See, there are people who have inspired me, and when I seek my inspiration, I go seek something that I want to do in this life which someone else has done. And I see that if in this life, what I want to do, what is my purpose in life, is to go see who I am, then you can't be comfortable with answers of people who they're sure this is who they are. You're realizing the person that says, I don't believe anything, has things that he can say which don't need to change life into another view. You know, it's as if it's fine, you could see from any degrees of the circle, right? But if you choose to see at 30 degrees, for example, 40 degrees, 50 degrees, whatever, 90 degrees, it doesn't matter. You need to see the full view. And let me tell you, circles are interesting, but you need to also acknowledge the idea of spirals. I don't see people talking about this that much, and I'm going to probably talk about a lot about spirals and what spirals of experience are. Because, trust me, I have had many commentaries and writings. In other words, I've written a lot of stuff on geometry, consciousness, and relationships with our formless collective being. And we see that what that all comes down to is you. And how comfortable are you with you, and how comfortable are people with you? Right now you see our youth is thinking, how comfortable are people with me because I'm becoming a citizen? Well, that's true. But how comfortable people are doesn't mean that that the comfort is always here. There is drama. And I see that the pace of my speech has just been amped up, so I guess I'll kind of follow it. Right now, we need to act quick. We need to understand that we need to make an instant and immediate decision of being a better sense of self. And outside of any soundtrack to life, we find ourselves enjoying our walks. So first thing, enjoy how you're alive right now, and enjoy your movement and your walk. Enjoy your sense of dynamic motion, of being in a moving process. Enjoy this and appreciate it. Now understand that once you're aware of movement, that means your presence is greater than the isolation of the movement. So the sense of separation actually fades, and we see that our echoes remain in the distance because we are looking at a depth we hadn't before. You need to see, I sometimes like to use the idea of a pilot, because as a pilot, I am simply communicating other landscapes which are ideas which you understand. So, in a sense, the alteration of consciousness is the alteration of your attention and your awareness and identification in where your attention is. Because if you become one of those people in Plato's allegory of the cave who just sees the shadow, you can choose to see existence as a shadow. But you can also choose to see existence from that untraceable light that is creating the shadow. Nature is a fascinating thing. So pretty much if we're all in this design of a life, of a world, of a dimension, let's say, what we can do is increase our sensitivity and our sense of integrative awareness to every separate phenomena, and to enjoy both the separation and the unification of the experience of man, and also the experience of man and what is changing and opening up into its own greater remembrance within. In other words, what that means is your greater sense of self, which is always here, but it is being remembered. In other words, when people talk about remembrance, you see that remembrance is simply an awareness of who you were. Because how else can you remember a past that you were not? And you see that it is the story of our memories and how valuable memories are to us that we conclude the phenomena of life. Life is not a video game, but it can be lived as one. When I say life is not a video game, I mean the idea of life. You know? You need to understand that stories can become very real. And when stories become real, the decision maker has faded into the storyteller's will. So what we find at some point is the collective realization of music playing everywhere we walk is that there's more to life than what we think. That the beliefs you have on what your life is or the condition is not full. You don't have a 360 view on your problems, so stop judging yourself. Sometimes you need to go through the same experience a couple times to ask the right question. And when you ask the right question, the problem was never there. So how can I say this? In other words, if I say that my shoes are part of my body, you will say scientifically you're insane. You're just wearing your shoes, they feel like they're part of it. Oh, I'm like, okay, if my shoes feel part of my body, so that means they're not? But how can you tell? You don't see my feet, you don't see my leg connected to my shoe, you know? And so the scientists may doubt, but then we realize it doesn't matter. It's our definition of what a shoe is that suggests how true our walk can be. So I guess what that means is, in a sense, the forms don't matter. And the forms and the identity that is choosing the forms of experience doesn't matter. What you think is you, which is the identity which is organizing your life right now, is an attention to an image. And we have attention to many images. So this divine attention that we have can experience through anything. In other words, you don't need to just be in this specific location of physicality to just be aware. In other words, let me say this in a very profound way, I guess. You know how you are experiencing space and time right now in the space you are? You can be in a different space and also experience an awareness to space and time. So if you can be aware in two different places, that means you can be aware in anywhere. So you realize your awareness is not immediately relevant to your storyline or to where you are or what you've done. You need to understand that the only reason you should judge your past or utilize your past, for example, I see a lot of people saying, this was my past life. This was my past life. That's not wrong. But you need to understand that you received that in the way you decided to. That came to you. That naturally was given to you. We're not all given the same gifts. That's why there are many different talents. But we understand that the same gift can be perceived through anyone. In other words, the more able the human being becomes, and the faster we find the next Usain Bolt, you know, we will just see that speed is an experience. And the speed of life is also an experience. But you choose what part of the system to design and to engineer. Let me tell you, science at its peak shall show you the vision of the engineer. And once you have become an engineer, once you're someone who can work with separation and create things in a separate universe, you also need to be attentive of all these unified views to all these ideas. In other words, go back and see everything you learned in school and see if you can see the unified platform within it that can suggest the separation. Because how can you know this life is separate? Only by knowing that it's unified. So your unity, you have forgotten your sense of unity. Your remembrance is your unification with all that is. Remember this in your own way. Let it be revealed to you naturally. Let my voice be part of all a different series of events that is just tuned to you, to how your revelation is going to come about. You need to enjoy your life by seeing that it does have a flow. It does have a rhythm. That regardless of your lifestyle and its built structure, you are progressing with an intelligence and a direction that can only be kissed when you are in that unknown sense of excitement of revelation of the next moment. In other words, what they forgot to say is that when Jesus came and said, or perhaps, I don't know if he even said it, I don't know what the history accurately is, but if someone comes and says, this is revelation, you'd be like, this is what I am telling you within this moment. So when Jesus stood there, probably, I'm assuming, and he had this awareness of this unified being, this unified presence, this Christ. We call it Christ consciousness, but I'm telling you, Christ didn't call it Christ consciousness. He just called it consciousness. So the value in our vision is based on the attention and alertness and awareness we have to our moment of identification with anything. That moment where you're aware. How you are aware of yourself suggests your state of being and consciousness. So, when Christ was there, I'm pretty sure maybe, I don't know actually, but I don't think he would have gone there and he's like, guys, I have the revelation to all existence. He could imply it in a very mystical and unknown way, but it's as if people believed him verbatim back in the day, that means they didn't see him. You see, Jesus had a presence. These prophets had a presence, which because they have gone, they're not physically manifest anymore. That presence is communicated to us through stories. But you need to understand, the human presence communicates things no story can capture. So the worst thing that can happen for human civilization is for them to realize that they are disconnected without realizing that they're connected. Where is your disconnect being defined from? And there's always a unified observance smiling within your smile. There's love here for you. And when I say for you, it's your love. When you see how much love you perceive, you can perceive more love. In other words, a lot of people, they're like, I want to make money, so I want to go around a lot of money, so a lot of money comes to me, right? And there's some people who, they see why even money, and they see it's love. They want to experience existential unification. They want to experience something more than what they're experiencing now. And what can give you that is a profound sense of honesty that you don't know anything, but the moment is your all-knowingness. And you realize that you can't analyze and create reports, and you could transform thousands of branches into paper that all branches can turn into papers, but we need to see that there is more to the truth. That if we are all believing in one view of life, who's believing the other view? So to be honest, human consciousness is at a point where its use for language is going to decline a little bit in appreciation of the greater process. In other words, we're going to stop talking about whose belief is right or wrong. We're just going to appreciate for a second how we're alive. And we realize that there are ways you can be alive in silence and stillness that scientific discovery can never acknowledge. Because scientific discovery is about seeing the separation within this life. So if there's no scientists that have their attention to seeing the connectivity within all things outside of formed language, then there's no need for dogma, so the person would never be a scientist. So if you're a scientist, you're trying to figure out why the world is separate and why the world is the way it is. But you need to understand you're keeping your alertness and your attention limited to the beliefs that appear more true for you. Truth is not a game. It is a moment of realization that there was nothing to realize other than that which is presently here. You see, guys, there's certain stages that I find a person can go through into becoming a more efficient being, let's say, more vibrant, more connected, more, I guess, having more profound experiences of life. And how you do that is, one, you stop things. You stop everything. You stop all the scripts that you're writing in your mind. You stop all the voices that are telling you to stop or not do something or do something. And you, just like how you get rid of the dust off your shoulder, you get rid of the angel and devil that are on your shoulder always judging you, and you simply clear away that dirt and realize that you don't need judgments on your life because you're here experiencing it now. That judgments were always a choice to look through shapes. And you don't have to look through shape. You can acknowledge the page without writing anything in it. You can acknowledge the emptiness of reality without having to have a certain belief. And this observance is a natural thing. And so we need to see that the student that was seeking a guru was actually taking a longer route. Because what the guru can tell yourself is that you think I'm a guru because you think you're not a guru. Because you think there's this realm of disconnection, and that what you feel is your chained, unknown madness is actually a very blissful experience of having a multi-dimensional presence that is able to create an infinity of experiences. I am simply a voice in life. And there are many other voices in life. And there are many other voices in life that are not similar to mine. They disagree. They are different. They cannot ever be the same. So there can never be the same reality. However, there is one existential throat in which life is always speaking to us through. The throat of existence is where our every single voice comes from. And thus we must be sensitive to the livelihood. We must respect the experiences we've gone through and the gifts and the scars they have given us. You're not alone in your loneliness. You're having a human experience. Become aware of the alterations of your consciousness and how experience unfolds for the person that realizes he could never know all that is, but could become the knowing that never needed to be shaped to understand. If you define all your life based on a triangle, it will be hard for you to suddenly see an upside down triangle. If you think that one shape has more power over your reality, you're not aware of other shapes, and so you think that you have to look at that shape. In other words, you're looking at a certain spotlight and you're like, the light is burning my eyes. No, but at the same time, you're looking at the spotlight. Give your attention and allowance to naturally adjust itself. In other words, go beside trees, breathe, and just like how everything is gravitating to the center of the world, let your body align and harmonize itself. Keep breathing deeply and relax your shoulders, perhaps even sit down, and just have a very comfortable experience of your life. And, it's a good moment. It's your choice. It doesn't matter if it sounds corny to people, it's people are eating too many GMOs anyway. So you just be yourself and let that be your own unknown definition that doesn't need to be set to anyone. You see, we're not just climbing one mountain. Our body's going through experiences. Our ideas are altering. Our ideas are alive. And when they're alive, that means their intelligence is not limited to us. There's a collective intelligence in every moment of existence. You just are ignorant to it, or you don't have words for it, and that is not ignorance, that is revelation that is innately present within you. If you know where your truth is directed towards without knowing the direction, you are okay as long as you trust yourself. To trust yourself means to trust that your experience will guide you to the next experience that you need. To trust life is to let love be your guide. And love was always a grander consideration of separation. When all separate forms came to bow down or worship their greater self, they realized there never was a greater self. There was only the experience of a greater self. So when we have gurus here, let's say if, I don't know how people perceive me, but let's say there's this guy on YouTube, his name is Sadhguru, S-A-D, Guru, which is kind of insane because it says Sadhguru is kind of like sad guru, right? But he's not sad. He's actually one of the most happiest people and a very, very kind human being that's alive, right? So Sadhguru is a person who is embodying a spiritual lifestyle based on spiritual habits to show people that life can be lived differently based on any scientific fixation that has limited our vision. Science has given us great vision, but it also is confused based on the sense of separation and who is observing. In other words, science hasn't asked the most fundamental question, who is the experiencer? And so they go based on experiences that are always changing. So I really want to see a bunch of scientists enter a dream state and try to figure out how things logically make sense. And you realize it only has to be outside. In other words, we feel intelligent, aware, and alert of things that we can observe. You feel smart because you know you're not below, you're not standing under something, you're standing above something, right? To stand above means to recognize a greater sense of being, which will be you. In other words, if I told you, if you were constantly every day in a happy state of being, trust me, your ideas of a dull self, of a lonely self, will fade into your greater understanding of why you're here. You always want an understanding of why you're here, and you want that understanding to be your own. You want it to be your truth. You actually want it to be the peak of the greatest mountain you climb. That this life is a journey, and it is the greatest journey that all my experiences from the past will ever have, because it's unknown and it shall be revealed. Life is a blissful moment of infinite revelation of your own experience of everything that you're seeing. And trust me, if you can look in the mirror and see that there's another sense, another holographic vision of you standing there, understand that you are multi-presented in this life. Your intelligence is not limited, and it's not communicatable all the time through language. Language is its own limitation. Language can try to touch the limitless, but it needs to break before it can truly be limitless, be infinite. So I hope that in my talks you have recognized the value in what we call divine attention, but is actually not a story, is the exploration of your more multidimensional presence. And you need to understand the greatest lessons and teachings you can get is not from traveling around the world and trying to see some guru in India. It is about how deeply you're observing your moment of being alive. And that's when you look at life very well. When you look at life, you can see the life that is within everyone. If you see people or objects, if you see ants or objects, if you see nature as an object, then trust me, you will seek a result that either breaks it or breaks you. Your separation creates and opens up a realm of experience where you feel you are blind, but at the same time, you are all-seeing. And the all-seeing part is a greater contribution. In other words, if we're all thrown in this life, we're choosing the designs that can explain who we are. We are explaining our design. And people have come and said evolution and stuff, and those were keen observations of what a separated animal can do. But we're not just a separated animal. We are a greater awareness. We're the animal looking at itself, and it's our responsibility to take care of animals, to take care of life. Because we have greater abilities of reasoning. Our induction and deduction methodology is greater because our machinery is suggesting more of creative potential. So the human being can find the answers to all the creatures in the world. We can see their problem, and we have. You see, the human being finds himself in society not a free animal. In other words, a lion finds himself free. But people in a social world find themselves not free because they're judged based on how much they know or how much they don't know, or how capable they are and how incapable they are. So we see that there are greater entities judging our life, and some of them are helpful or not. We see that unhelpful entities, when we see bad beings and good beings and being affected by bad and good, that is only based on our subscription to a reality where separations have been too objectified to be defined. In other words, we have angels and we have demons. But we need to see that what is the end result of a twisted circle of life, a twisted wheel. Life is said to be, there's this wheel of life, a cyclical life. But we see that once that circle is twisted in a self-reflection, the circle creates an infinity sign with an amazing twist to it. In that, once you see the whole picture of life, you then twist it to see the other spectrum. In other words, once you've become the greatest definition of, let's say, success, you at the same time will have the greatest observance of a lack of success. So similarly, at any moment in your life, you are a balance of different ratios between how right or wrong things feel to you. But that right or wrong analysis, judgment system is your own self-created judgment day. And your days don't need to be judged by your past. They need to never be judged and actually be introduced by the future. You want your present, you want your awareness to life to not be on your past to your present. You want your awareness to your life to be on your present to your future, but you realize that they're all implied. In other words, your past also implies your present also implies your future, and your future also implies your present and also implies your past. And therefore, we have a triangle of the experience of time, which all comes down to be connected in the same circle, which is the same point and the same beginning, and also probably the concepts I've spoken about in the first book I wrote. So, I guess in a sense, guys, get rid of all commercial value and begin having a very honest, sincere, and real search for yourself. And always begin with the moment, because the moment is what you have to begin with. What is just now? What is right here? This is what you have to work with, and begin looking deeply. Begin making your searches calmer, slower. When the speed of things goes up, in other words, let's say I'm juggling things, right? When I'm juggling things, if the speed of my juggling increases, there are chances where I will throw away some balls or I can't catch the balls right on time. But when we slow down the juggling process, we see that it's much more manageable. But then if we completely slow it down where we're not juggling, it's as if we're not even juggling. We just have the balls in our hand, right? We just have a very still view of life. So these things that we're juggling, we need to realize that sometimes if we're juggling too fast, we need to slow down. We need to become still. If we're experiencing havoc, if we're experiencing chaotic communication where things are dramatically changing, we also need to experience a lack of dynamicness and experience stillness. You need to alter your attention between different experiences you can have to be comfortable with the experiences that you will go through and the range they present themselves in. Find infinitely on one spectrum the sense of you that can be connected to all infinity, and also find the section of you, the part of you that can be finite. And just be aware that the being that's acknowledging both of these is really a very complete presence. You are a complete presence, so stop freaking out about the way your program's been written. Just be aware of the programmer and your life will be valuable. And trust me, I'm not the first one to say this. Even though I do say my ideas in my new voice, but a lot of them are just communicating things said in the past. Trust me, because I have a lot to communicate, just very unique individual experiences and my probably commentary on human consciousness. I think some of my greatest work in this lifetime will be my commentary on human consciousness and what multidimensional experience really means, existential philosophy pretty much. But outside of that contribution, I also understand that it's practical. That means I'm not just here to write books. I'm also here to show people how their consciousness can unfold to them and how it was never folded. So I hope with my voice and the naturalness that we find in a fading cloud, you let all forms and even everything I've said to you be just like that cloud that was present in the sky, but it wasn't the limitlessness that one could perceive in the sky. Look at your limitless sky. Because your limitation is a hindrance for the greatest self that is waiting to be realized and remembered within all that you are. Thank you.